I asked her why she was so nervous around me. She looked down at her hands and whispered something I didn't expect. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just awkwardness. It was fear, honesty, and something real colliding at once. And I had no idea that one quiet confession would slowly change both of our lives. My name is Leo. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a fitness trainer at a mid-sized gym on the edge of the city. I live alone in a small apartment about 15 minutes from work, close enough that I usually walk there in the mornings. My days are built around routine, early shifts, training plans, short conversations, and long hours on my feet. After a difficult breakup 2 years ago, I stopped expecting much from people. I focused on work, kept my life simple, and avoided anything that felt emotionally complicated. That Tuesday started like any other. I opened the gym at 6, wiped down the counters, checked the schedule, and went through the usual greetings with regular clients. By late morning, the gym slowed down. That's when I noticed a woman standing near the front desk, looking at the membership flyers without really reading them. She looked around 28, maybe a little younger. Dark hair pulled back neatly, simple clothes, clean hands that immediately caught my attention because of how carefully kept they were. She hesitated before stepping closer, like she wasn't sure if she should interrupt. I asked if she needed help. She startled slightly, as if she hadn't expected my voice, and nodded too quickly. She introduced herself as May. She said she worked nearby and wanted to ask about short-term memberships. Her voice was quiet but rushed, as if she was afraid of taking up too much space. As she spoke, her hands kept moving. She adjusted her sleeve, tucked hair behind her ear, then dropped her phone on the floor. When she bent to pick it up, she apologized twice in a row. I told her it was fine, that it happens all the time, but she still looked embarrassed. I explained the options, keeping things professional. She listened, nodded, but didn't ask many questions. I noticed she avoided looking directly at me, her eyes flicking away whenever our gaze almost met. At the time, I assumed she was just nervous about sales talk or uncomfortable in gyms. I didn't read into it. When she left, she thanked me quickly and walked out faster than necessary. I stood there for a moment, feeling oddly unsettled. It wasn't attraction exactly, more like the sense that something hadn't landed the way it should have. Over the next week, I saw her again. And again. May signed up for a basic membership and started coming in during my shifts. She always chose equipment far from where I was working. If I passed by, she stiffened slightly. If I asked how things were going, she answered politely but briefly. At first, I thought she didn't like me. Maybe I'd come off as cold. Maybe she felt uncomfortable around trainers in general. I decided to give her space. I kept my distance, stuck to my clients, and treated her like any other member. Still, I noticed things. She adjusted her grip constantly. She wiped her palms on her leggings between sets. When I walked past, she held her breath like she was bracing herself. One evening, as we were closing, we ended up leaving at the same time. The parking lot was quiet, the sky already dark. We walked in the same direction without speaking. The silence felt heavy. I finally asked if everything was okay between us. I told her she seemed uncomfortable, and I wanted to make sure I hadn't done something wrong. She stopped walking. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Her shoulders rose slightly, like she was taking a deep breath. When she turned to face me, her face was red, and she looked genuinely panicked. She said no, it wasn't me. She said she was just tired, stressed, busy. The words came out too fast, stacked on top of each other. Before I could respond, she apologized again and said she had to go. She left me standing there, feeling foolish for asking. That night, I replayed the moment more than I wanted to admit. I told myself to let it go. People have their own reasons. Not everything needs an explanation. But the next morning, when I saw her walk into the gym and immediately tense up, I knew this wasn't just stress. Something was there. Something unspoken. And whatever it was heavier than a simple misunderstanding. I didn't know yet that this awkwardness was only the beginning. The days after that evening felt heavier than they should have. Nothing had changed on the surface, yet everything felt slightly off. May kept coming to the gym, always around the same time, always when I was on shift. And every time, the same pattern repeated itself. She avoided eye contact. If I walked toward her side of the gym, she suddenly needed water or switched machines. When I passed behind her, her shoulders tightened. She was polite, never rude, but distant in a way that felt deliberate. I told myself to stay professional. As a trainer, I'd learned not to take things personally. People come with their own insecurities, their own boundaries. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was somehow the problem. One afternoon, she struggled with a piece of equipment she clearly wasn't comfortable using. I hesitated before approaching, not wanting to make her uncomfortable again. But it was my job. I asked if she needed help. She flinched slightly, then nodded. Her hands were shaking as she stepped aside to let me adjust the settings. When our fingers almost touched, she pulled back quickly, as if she'd touched something hot. I explained the movement slowly, keeping my distance. She listened, eyes fixed on the floor. When I finished, she thanked me in a voice so quiet I barely heard it. As she walked away, I felt a strange mix of frustration and concern. I wasn't offended. I was confused. Later that week, one of my colleagues joked that maybe she had a crush. I laughed it off. That explanation felt too easy, too unrealistic. People don't act that tense around someone they like, I told myself. They avoid you when they don't. So I adjusted. I stopped offering help unless she asked. I made sure not to cross her space. I treated her like someone who wanted distance. That's when things got worse. She started coming even earlier, sometimes waiting outside before opening hours. I'd catch her watching me through the glass, then quickly looking away when I noticed. Once inside, she stayed quiet, focused, almost rigid. One evening, I overheard her talking on the phone in the locker hallway. She didn't know I was there. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she said quietly. "I just freeze. It's stupid." She noticed me and immediately ended the call. Her face flushed, and she walked past me without saying a word. That night, I went home irritated with myself for listening, irritated with the situation, and more than anything, irritated that I cared at all. A few days later, something changed. May came to the front desk near closing time. The gym was almost empty. She stood there for a long moment before speaking, as if she was gathering courage. She asked about wrist-friendly exercises. She said her hand had been sore from work. As a nail technician, she used her hands all day. I could hear the tension in her voice, but this time, she didn't leave. I suggested a few light movements and offered to show her. She hesitated, then agreed. During the session, I noticed how tense she was. Her breathing was shallow. Her grip slipped even on the lightest resistance band. Sweat gathered on her palms, even though the room was cool. I finally stopped and asked if she was okay. She nodded too quickly, then shook her head, then laughed, a short nervous sound that didn't match her expression. I told her she didn't have to do anything that made her uncomfortable. I said it calmly, without pressure. For a moment, I thought she might walk away again. Instead, she sat down on the bench and stared at her hands. She rubbed her palms together like she was trying to dry them. I asked, gently, why she was so nervous around me. The question hung between us. She didn't answer right away. Her shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to act," she said. "Every time you're near me, my hands get sweaty. I can't control it. I feel stupid." She laughed again, but this time her eyes were wet. The honesty caught me off guard. I hadn't expected that answer. I hadn't expected vulnerability so raw and unguarded. I didn't joke. I didn't brush it off. I just told her thank you for telling me. I said it meant a lot that she trusted me enough to be honest. She looked up then, really looked at me for the first time since we'd met. Her expression softened, like something inside her finally relaxed. We sat there for a few seconds in silence. Not awkward this time, just quiet. When she left that evening, she walked slower. She even smiled at me before turning toward the door. I watched her go, realizing that everything I thought I understood about the situation had been wrong, and that whatever this was, it was far from over. After that evening, I expected May to disappear for a few days the way she had before. People open up and then regret it. I'd seen it with clients, with friends, even with myself. But she didn't vanish. She came back 2 days later, right on schedule, and for the first time since we met, she didn't look like she was preparing for a disaster. She still seemed shy, still careful, but the panic was gone. When she walked in, she gave me a small wave. Nothing dramatic. Just a quiet acknowledgement that something between us had shifted. I kept things normal. I didn't bring up what she'd said. I didn't want her to feel exposed or embarrassed. I greeted her like any other member and went back to coaching. But I noticed her more than I wanted to admit. May moved differently now. Less rigid. She didn't keep changing machines when I passed by. She didn't hide in the far corners. She trained closer to where the staff desk was, like she wasn't trying to avoid being seen. And when I asked how her wrist felt, she answered without rushing away. "It's better," she said. "I tried what you showed me. It helped." That was it. A normal sentence. But it felt like progress. A few days later, the gym got unexpectedly busy. January does that. People come in with goals, guilt, energy. It's good for business, but it makes the place louder, tighter, less private. I was bouncing between clients and cleaning up equipment as quickly as I could. I saw May at the cable machine, adjusting it with one hand. She kept switching her grip, shaking out her fingers between attempts. Her face tightened like she was trying to ignore pain. I walked over. "You okay?" I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "It's not terrible," she said, and I knew immediately that meant it was worse than she wanted to admit. I told her to stop for a second. I lowered the weight, showed her a safer hand position, and suggested she switch to a simpler movement that wouldn't strain her wrist. She followed my instructions, but winced anyway. I could tell she was stubborn, the kind of person who works through discomfort because work demands it. Nail techs don't get sick days easily. If you cancel clients, you lose them. I asked her what exactly she did for work, even though I already knew the basics. Sometimes people relax when they talk about what they're good at. "My own small studio," she said. "Manicures, gel, extensions, everything." "That's a lot on your hands," I said. She nodded. "I'm booked most days. I can't really afford to stop." She said it like it was a fact, not a complaint. When she finished the light set, she sat down on a bench near the stretching area. I stayed close but gave her space. The gym noise carried around us, but there was a small calm pocket where we stood. She flexed her fingers and looked at her palms like she was checking for something. Then she laughed softly. "I'm doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" I asked, though I already had a guess. She lifted her hands a little. "Sweating." I glanced, trying not to make it a big deal. It was subtle, but noticeable. She wiped her palms on her leggings, then immediately looked embarrassed about wiping them. "It happens," I said. "It's normal." She shook her head like she didn't believe me. "Not like this," she said. "It's ridiculous." I sat on the bench across from her, keeping a respectful distance. "May," I said calmly, "you're not ridiculous. You're human." She stared down at her hands, and for a moment, she looked like she might shut down again. I decided to be honest too. "I thought you didn't like me," I said. "At first, I thought I made you uncomfortable." Her head snapped up. "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. Then she slowed down. "I mean, you did make me uncomfortable, but not in a bad way." She immediately looked like she regretted saying it. I didn't push. I just waited. May took a breath. "I'm not good at this," she said. "At talking. At being normal." "You're doing fine," I said. She pressed her lips together, like she was trying to decide something. Then she spoke, fast, as if the words would escape if she didn't catch them. "I get nervous around you," she said. "And I hate it. Because you're not doing anything wrong. You're just you. And I can't control my body. My hands sweat, my heart goes stupid, and I feel like I'm 15. She let out a short laugh, then covered her face with one hand. I felt my chest tighten. Not in a romantic movie way. In a real way. Like I'd been trusted with something fragile. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice low so it didn't feel like the whole gym could hear. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "Seriously." She lowered her hand and looked at me, surprised. "You're not annoyed?" "Why would I be annoyed?" I asked. "Because it's weird," she said. "Because I'm awkward. Because I act like I'm scared of you." I shook my head. "You're not weird. You're just nervous. And it makes sense if you've had reasons to be nervous around people." She blinked, and her expression changed. Like that hit something deeper. "I don't like feeling out of control," she said quietly. "I work with people all day, and I'm fine. I talk, I smile, I act confident. But with you, I can't fake it." I nodded. "Maybe you don't have to fake it," I said. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she exhaled, slow, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "I don't even know you," she said, almost like a complaint. "That's true," I said. "We don't." "Not really." She shifted on the bench. "So why do I feel like this?" I didn't try to give her a perfect answer. Life doesn't work like that. "Maybe you're just attracted," I said carefully. "Maybe you're curious. Maybe you've been lonely. Or maybe you just feel safe for some reason. I don't know. But I do know you don't have to be ashamed of it." Her eyes softened. "Safe," she repeated quietly, like she was testing the word. I surprised myself by saying what came next. "If you ever want to grab a coffee after work," I said, "we could do that." No pressure. Just two people talking like normal adults. May looked frozen for half a second. Then she laughed. Real this time. Not nervous. Warm. My hands are going to be sweating through the cup, she said. I smiled. Then we'll get napkins, I said. She held my gaze, and for the first time, I felt like we weren't circling each other anymore. We were standing in the same place. She nodded once, small and decisive. Okay, she said. Coffee. We didn't set a dramatic date. We just agreed. Simple. Real. When she walked out that night, she looked lighter. And I realized I did too. We didn't make coffee into a big moment. There was no dramatic pause, no long stare in the doorway. We just agreed, like adults, and then went back to our lives. The next day, May showed up at the gym like usual. She wasn't suddenly confident or flirting like someone in a movie. She was still herself, still a little shy. But she didn't avoid me. When I walked past, she smiled. A small smile, but real. After my shift ended, I changed out of my trainer shirt and waited by the front desk. May finished her workout slowly, like she didn't want to look too eager. She wiped down the equipment, put her jacket on, and walked over. Still okay? I asked. She nodded. Still okay, she said, then glanced at her hands and added, I washed them twice. I laughed, and she did too. The tension that used to live between us had loosened. Not gone completely, but lighter, like a knot that's finally starting to untie. We went to a small coffee place a few blocks away. Nothing trendy, just a warm spot with simple tables, quiet music, and a line of tired people getting caffeine after work. May ordered tea instead of coffee. She said too much coffee made her hands worse. We found a table near the window. For the first 10 minutes, we talked about normal things. Work, schedules, the cold weather, how the gym gets crowded in January. She told me her studio was on the second floor of an older building and that her landlord was always fixing things without fixing them. I told her I'd lived in my apartment for 3 years and still didn't know my neighbor's name. She looked genuinely shocked. How do you not know? She asked. I shrugged. I'm not social like that. She tilted her head. But you talk to people all day. That's different, I said. At work, I know what to do. There are rules. Outside of work, it's messy. May nodded slowly, like she understood more than I expected. As we talked, I noticed something. Her hands weren't sweating. She still fidgeted with her cup, but she wasn't panicking. Her shoulders weren't raised. She was present. You're calmer, I said without thinking. She blinked. Am I? Yeah, I said. I think you are. May stared at her tea, then said quietly, It's because you're not making me feel stupid about it. I didn't have a clever response. I just nodded. We stayed there for almost an hour. When we walked out, the air was cold and sharp. May pulled her jacket tighter and looked up at the streetlights like she was deciding whether to end the night or keep it going. I should get home, she said. Yeah, I said. Me too. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just quiet. I had a nice time, she said. Me too, I answered. She looked down at her hands, then back up. They didn't sweat, she said, half proud, half amused. That's progress, I said. She smiled and gave a small wave before heading toward her car. I watched her go, then walked home feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement like a teenager. More like relief. Like maybe I hadn't missed my chance at normal connection after all. Over the next couple of weeks, we kept it simple. Coffee again after my shift. A walk once, when the weather wasn't too bad. Short messages that didn't feel forced. She didn't flood my phone, and neither did I. We weren't playing games. We were just learning each other. May told me about her clients. How some women treat their nail appointment like therapy. How she hears everything from divorces to pregnancies to job losses. She said she had learned to smile and listen and keep her own feelings tucked away. I'm good at acting fine, she admitted one night, stirring her drink. Sometimes I don't even know if I'm actually fine. I told her about training. About how people come in wanting to change their bodies, but what they really want is to feel in control of something. And you? She asked. What do you want? The question hit me harder than I expected. I stared out the window for a moment. Then I answered honestly. I want things to be simple, I said. I want peace. I don't want to guess what someone is thinking all the time. May nodded slowly, like she understood the weight behind that. It wasn't until our third time hanging out that I told her about my past relationship. Not details, not drama. Just the truth. I'd been with someone for 5 years. We lived together. We planned things. Then slowly, without any big event, it fell apart. There was cheating, yes, But what hurt more was how long I ignored the signs because I wanted to believe it was fine. After that, I said, I stopped trusting my own judgment. I thought I was bad at reading people, so I kept my distance from everyone. It was easier. May listened without interrupting. When I finished, she didn't try to fix it. She just said, "That makes sense." I didn't realize how rare that was until she said it. A week later, she told me something too. She'd been engaged once, in her early 20s. The guy was charming at first, then controlling. Not physically violent, but always pushing, always criticizing, always making her feel like she was too much and not enough at the same time. I left, she said, but I think part of me stayed scared. Like my body remembers what my mind wants to forget. That explained a lot. The sweating, the freezing, the panic around attraction. It wasn't just shyness. It was history. I reached across the table, slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. I placed my hand near hers, not touching it first. She looked at it, then placed her fingers lightly on top of mine. Her hand was warm, slightly damp, but steady. "I'm okay," she said quietly, almost like she was convincing herself. I nodded. "We can take it slow," I said. "No pressure." May exhaled, and I felt her grip relax. From then on, things grew in small, real ways. She started coming to the gym at times when she didn't have to. Not because she needed a workout plan, but because she liked being around. Sometimes she'd sit in the lounge area with her tea while I finished with clients, scrolling on her phone, waiting without making it a big deal. I started stopping by her studio once in a while, usually at the end of her day. I didn't get manicures often, but I liked seeing her in her world. She was different there. Confident. Focused. Her hands didn't shake at all when she worked. She moved like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. One evening, after she finished with her last client, she locked the door and leaned back against the counter. "I'm tired," she said. I stepped closer, not rushing. "Want me to walk you to your car?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah," she said. Then, quieter, "I like when you do that." Outside, the street was quiet, the air cold. We walked slowly, shoulder to shoulder. At her car, she turned toward me. "I'm trying," she said, "to not run away." I felt my throat tighten. "I see that," I said. She looked at my face like she was choosing something. Then she leaned forward and kissed my cheek. Quick, soft, barely there, but it landed like something solid. Her hands were on my jacket for half a second. Then she pulled back. "I should go," she said, voice shaking slightly. I nodded. "Text me when you get home." She smiled, got into her car, and drove off. I stood there for a moment, realizing that this wasn't a rush. It wasn't a fantasy. It was two people learning to trust again, one small step at a time. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid of where it might go. By the time spring arrived, nothing between us felt rushed anymore. It felt steady, natural, like something that had found its rhythm without forcing it. May and I didn't suddenly become a couple overnight. There was no dramatic confession or big turning point. Instead, there were routines. I walked her to her car more often than not. She waited for me at the gym lounge when my last client ran late. Sometimes we didn't even talk much. We just shared space, and that was enough. One evening, she came to the gym later than usual. Her studio had been busy all day, and I could see the exhaustion in her face the moment she walked in. She didn't work out. She just sat on the bench near the lockers and watched me finish my shift. When I was done, I sat beside her. "You look wiped," I said. She nodded. "I am, but it's a good kind of tired." We walked outside together. The air was warmer now, the kind that feels like things are finally moving forward. She didn't pull away when my arm brushed hers. Instead, she leaned slightly closer. Halfway to her car, she stopped. "Leo," she said, serious now. I turned to face her. "I need to say something," she continued, "and I don't want to overthink it." I waited. "At the beginning," she said, "I was terrified. Not of you. Of what being close to you meant. Of losing control again. But I don't feel like that anymore." I watched her hands as she spoke. They were calm. No shaking. No wiping against her clothes. "I feel safe," she said. "And I don't want to pretend this is just casual anymore." I took a breath. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until she said it. "I don't want casual either," I replied. "I've been careful because I didn't want to scare you off. Or scare myself." She smiled faintly. "You didn't." We stood there for a moment, the city noise around us, ordinary and real. "So," she said, "what are we doing?" I didn't dodge it this time. "We're together," I said. "If you want to be." May nodded once, firm. "I do." I stepped closer and kissed her, slow and deliberate. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Her hands rested against my chest, steady and warm. When we pulled back, she laughed quietly. "They're not sweating," she said. I smiled. "Told you. Progress." From that night on, there was no confusion. We started calling it what it was. A relationship. Not perfect, not dramatic, but honest. May met my friends. I met a few of her clients by accident, sitting in her studio waiting for her to finish up. She started teasing me about how serious I looked when I trained people. I teased her about how focused she got when she worked. Life didn't suddenly become easier. There were long days, missed dinners, moments of silence when one of us was too tired to talk. But there was no guessing, no tension, no fear of saying the wrong thing. One evening, months later, we sat on my couch after dinner. May had her legs tucked under her, leaning against me. She was absent-mindedly tracing circles on my arm. "You know," she said, "I used to think something was wrong with me." I looked down at her. "Because of the sweating?" She nodded. "Because of how my body reacted. I thought it meant I was weak." I shook my head. "It meant you cared." She smiled softly. "Yeah, I know that now." She looked up at me, serious again. "Thank you for not pushing. Or pulling away." "Thank you for staying," I replied. That summer, we planned a short trip together. Nothing fancy, just a few days away. It felt like the right next step. Not because we needed to prove anything, but because we wanted to. The night before we left, May packed in my living room while I double-checked reservations on my phone. She came over and held out her hands. "Check," she said. I took them. They were dry. "Still calm," she said proudly. I squeezed her fingers. "You don't have to test yourself anymore." She leaned in and rested her forehead against mine. "I know. I just like remembering where we started." So did I. We didn't end up as a dramatic story people would talk about. We became something quieter, something solid. Two people who started with fear and confusion and chose patience instead. And that was enough.